some of these issues, dissect them for the next 2 hours or so. Dismas Mokua, political commentators Dismas Mokua, Hesbon Owila, and Javas Bigambo. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me tonight.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
So let's pick up from where Musalia Mudavadi left off, and the IBC chair, Javas Wafula Chebukati, has said that if a candidate brings results to us, quote unquote, we cannot accept them. What is the latest? What's your take on where we are at this hour?
I'll want to stay on the field of pragmatism and start by saying that we know we need to pay fidelity to the law. What the law provides is that the IEBC is mandated to oversee the election, and actually as an independent commission, it is not supposed to get any directives from anybody. Now, looking at it that way, I also want to appreciate, for example, the sentiments of the Honorable Musalia Mudavadi. And he has indicated that from their own sources, right, they have got this kind of data, and by which they're demanding that Chebukati announces Raila Odinga as the winner. Now, that is their position. But what is the position of the law? Who is supposed to announce the results, and where is it supposed to come from? From the commission, through the chair. So now, if at all they've got another source, question would be, all the past 2 days or so, they have been demanding that these results should come from the constituencies through this Form 34 right, and 34 A's and B's, and that there's need for verification. Now, they have not even tried to destroy the ground of verification themselves. This is, in a way, appearing as though they are putting a gun to the head of the IBC and on Chebukati. I think it is proper for our leaders, really, to be fair-minded, because the kind of sentiments we are witnessing right now, they are likely to create much more anxiety in the country. It is not proper.
Hesbon, the NASA principals announcing their own results, you know, even as the IBC continues to announce their results, saying they have been the whole day checking those Forms 34A and B, you know, with those political party agents. What gives from where you sit?
From where I sit, I want to say that I agree with Jarvis here, that fidelity to the law is sacrosanct at this point. And even the pronouncements that are made by politicians, you know, should be alive to the fact that Kenyans believe in the rule of law and expect that after being told by Chebukati that the results that we are seeing on the screens are just provisional, are actually anxiously waiting for the verification of the Form 34A and B, you know, which will generate from Form 34C, from which the declaration will be made by the chair. But I want to believe that the pronouncements by the NASA principal, Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, is basically informed by the fact that they need to let IBC know that they also have, you know, some data that can back up most of the stands that they've taken. And it's also important to be clear on what they've said, because they did not declare, they just announced, and what they're saying is that from that, they expect IBC to declare. And there's some respect they've given to IBC with regards to fidelity to the law, that the only person who can declare a winner is the chair of the electoral and of IEBC, which again is very clear. But I want to say that it is important that even as these things are said, just like we have provisional results on the screen, we should also treat what they've given us as provisional, you know. I mean, it is just incumbent upon all Kenyans to follow the due process of the law. That if IBC is going through the verification of these forms from the constituency level and the polling stations, it is just important that we believe that whatever they are doing is what the law requires. And by the time they're done, you know, they make that official declaration. But I think from a political point of view, I think what they've done is just to manage a few you know, emotions that might be flaring, you know, in the sense that, you know, there are quarters that are already celebrating, you know. So this is also making a situation where there is some sort of balance. I saw folks in Kisumu celebrating, but they also need to be reminded that just like we cannot celebrate the results on the screen, we also cannot celebrate the results that, you know, are announced by you know, parties.
So between these two sets of results, if NASA believe Raila Odinga got 8 point something million votes, Do you think that they have the evidence that forms 34A and Bs? And do you think that at the end of it all, they have a case? Do you see where they're coming from?
Well, from where I see it, I think I see where they're coming from. Because, you have to look at it from a political point of view and say that if there's a perception that is created and there isn't anyone who's going to neutralize that perception, then we need to come in and also give something that is provisional. But I think it is very clear, that it doesn't matter what they have, what we have on the screens. The IBC chair already pronounced himself that he's going to follow the due process of the law. And the most authoritative source document or instrument here is Form 34A and B. Therefore, whoever is going to declare, who is mandated by the law, is going to declare on the basis of what we have on those forms,
right.
Which I don't think NASA can authoritatively say that they have. They can just say that they got it. And again, it raises a number of issues in terms of how did they get it and stuff like that.
Right.
In which case, it still cements the fact that we just need to treat them as provisional.
Dismas, do you think NASA have anything solid, or are they bluffing?
Well, there are many ways to look at this, but the first person we must congratulate is Mr. Chebukati. While he's the chairman of an independent commission, he receives instructions from nobody. He's supposed to act in an independent manner, but he has the obligation to receive and listen to concerns raised by any stakeholder. And as we speak right now, Raila Odinga is probably the biggest stakeholder in this election because he's got serious issues and allegations that he's making. So the fact that Chebukati created time for him, he needs to be given a pat on the back. Because if you recall in 2013, the same Raila Odinga team then called when they wanted to have a conversation with Mr. Isaac Hassan. He never gave them the opportunity to raise the concerns. Now, every Kenyan who thinks that this election is being held in a manner that deserves maybe some correction or anything is invited to present their views to IBC. And it's not necessarily the case that when you present your views, then the chairman is going to receive the views and act in a manner that you're suggesting. For him, he can receive anything, but at the end of the day, he knows the buck stops with him. Now, the reason why, in my understanding, the reason as to why NASA decided to give their own tallying, for the longest time, they've been telling us that they've got their own tallying somewhere. One probably in Germany, one in the clouds, and 3 in Kenya. So the fact that a few days ago, one of their tallying centers was raided, their supporters were beginning to ask on social media and in other avenues, where is the NASA tallying center? Because you told us, wakijumulisha, mnajumulisha, that they were going to do those things at par. So in my understanding, what Mr. Musalia Mudavadi was doing today was trying to manage expectations by telling their supporters that not only do we have the figures that we've tallied from our tallying center, but we've got sources within IBC who are giving figures to support what we have here at play. And I think they're sending a very strong message to IBC that whatever you are doing within your commission, if you're engaging in any manner of mischief, we are aware and we can demonstrate. And you recall, this is the second document that they're giving to IBC. The first one, they gave it a few days ago when they said that there was hacking, and they said the information came from an internal source.
Right.
Which brings us to two fundamental issues. You recall the chairman said that there was attempted hacking. That's Chebukati. But his CEO, Chiloba, said there was no attempted hacking. So now we are beginning to ask ourselves a million questions that between these two, between the chairman and the secretary to the commission,
right,
who is actually calling a spade, and is there any mischief going on?
So this is a second document that NASA team is given to the IBC. Javas, many people have been saying that NASA should just let this go and file a petition after the election. The results are announced and use this evidence and, take this to the Supreme Court. What does the IBC do with these documents that the NASA team keeps saying that it's evidence that they won this election?
Well, unless it's a question of just taking judicial notice, the thing is that there are in place frameworks for election dispute resolution, all right? And such mechanisms should guide how a dispute emanating out of an election should properly, justifiably be handled in a very fair manner. And I think while it is holding water, whatever the NASA is producing as a key player in this election, distancing a bit, myself a bit from what this must termed Raila Odinga as the main stakeholder in this election. The main stakeholder in this election are Kenyans. And if you look at it, you realize that so far, for the past couple of days, from Tuesday, actually even our economy continues to suffer, to receive a huge blow because of this kind of suspense and anxiety coming out of this election. But I think what is also important is for the politicians to know that they can raise any issue, whether it's Jubilee, whether it's NASA, whether it's Third Way Alliance, or any other kind of political party that was at play in this election, raise all those issues or petition the IEBC. But how do you petition the IEBC? Do you petition the IEBC in a manner that also seems to raise much more anxiety? Or do you petition the IEBC in such a manner that you present very credible or fundamental information, but in such a manner that is sober, that does not seem to, or can be construed in a manner that you are sending a particularly veiled message, say, to your supporters? And that's now where the challenge would possibly be. So that the IBC receives this information, and whatever they do with it, they stand informed and possibly guided to the extent that they will find it. So that in the end, when they're coming to announce the results after the verification, they should do that full well aware that the nation is watching, all the stakeholders are watching, and that in the end, this election right now as it is entirely depends on how IBC is going to handle it. So that after all these credibility issues and the fairness calls that have been there, even the results themselves must be credible, must be fair, and must be actually satisfactory to all the players. But the question is now, where do we move from here right now as it is? It's expected possibly that by tomorrow, noon or thereabout, the IBC should come clear on who has won this election. Now, hypothetically speaking, suppose the IBC announces that Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta has been re-elected. How will NASA take that message, all right, that declaration? Or suppose the IBC announces that Honorable Raila Odinga has been duly elected the fifth president of the Republic of Kenya. How will Jubilee handle this? The manner in which that is going to be handled by all the parties should be such that does not plunge the country and there's, especially through the supporters of all the two divides into some kind of chaos.
Very key moments ahead for this country. Dismas, how is the IBC supposed to deal with these documents from NASA? Well, what does NASA expect?
Well, my understanding is that these documents are supposed to inform Chebukati from a NASA perspective that we know what is happening within the commission, and these are our figures. But the buck still stops with Chebukati. He's a lawyer, he's guided by the rule of law, and he knows the right thing to do. That he's supposed to look at those from 34Bs and ensure that he uses those forms, he collects for the 290 constituencies, and declares who's become president. But there are a million gaps here that would require further interrogation. My understanding of the law is that the constituency returning officers were supposed to make an announcement at every constituency. So one would have expected that as you're having this conversation, that 290 constituency returning officers are running all over their constituencies making those announcements. This is, say, in Westlands, President Uhuru Kenyatta, 10,000 votes, Raila Odinga, 10,000 votes. And then, he sticks that 34B at the notice board and then scans the same document to Nairobi. So one begins to wonder, and maybe this is the space for lawyers, that the verification ongoing at Bomas, there are 6 teams which have been established to go through those forms. Is that actually acceptable within the law, or it's an illegal process? I think those are some of the questions. But my understanding, again, of this complicated subject, part of the reason why NASA is applying pressure is because of the Supreme Court. And I suspect right now they're down on bended knees, hoping that the pressure they're applying on Chebukati would be so much so that Chebukati declares Raila Odinga as the president-elect, so that if anybody goes to the Supreme Court, now it's going to be the Jubilee going to the Supreme Court, and vice versa. But at the end of the day, Chebukati knows, he's a lawyer, he knows about all the regulations around this. He's not supposed to succumb to pressure, not from Jubilee, because there are conversations that there is pressure coming down on him from Jubilee to declare President Kenyatta as having won this election. He must also not succumb to pressure from NASA to declare anybody president if he's not met within the legal and regulatory environment. So he must not succumb to anybody. He must remain loyal to the Constitution. He must remain loyal to the calling of his office and do the right thing. And what is the right thing? In my understanding, he should get these constituency returning officers, call them tonight and tell them to make announcements everywhere in the constituency, and he sits in his office with a basic calculator and do the tallying of those 290. And then we'll go back home.
Right, before we get to Chebukati's response, Hesbon, what is your response to this gentleman? And also, we haven't seen NASA, come out to dismiss or oppose any of those forms 34A and B. What does that mean?
I think
for the process.
Yes. In terms of what should Chebukati do, I don't think he has anything to do based on what anyone wants him to do. He needs to follow the due process of the law. And I want to agree with Dismas to some extent that whatever NASA is doing is just trying to mitigate any kind of mischief that anyone might be up to, because I'm not so sure anyone is up to. But you see, because you don't know what is going on, you want to mitigate any other thing that might go wrong. And therefore, to some extent, I think this is an indication that you just need to do what the law requires you to do. And it is not about Jubilee or NASA. I think this is about the people of this country, that the due process of all this is relatively open and transparent, that if IBC is verifying all the Form 34 bids, then the law requires that they put them in a portal, you know. Right. So maybe the question would be, why is it that they are not announced at the constituency level and pinned and scanned? But that is besides the point right now. We are dealing with a situation that we need to get over and done with. So what we need is to have them verified by the agents, and I want to believe that all the presidential candidates have agents who are men and women of integrity, and they're doing the right thing. After which, whatever Chebukati does, all Kenyans will have an opportunity to interrogate, tabulate if they want, and therefore whatever any side of the political divide is saying is neither here nor there. All right.
You wanted to say something before we go to Bomas?
I think also one of the reasons why we are facing this kind of quagmire is what I may consider a gap in our legislation, that there is no way we can hold a constituency returning officer culpable of some of this kind of perceived mischief that's ongoing. I think that later on may want to inform an amendment to the law, so that the issue here the weight of it all should not just rest on Chebukati alone, but finding a way that the returning officer who now declares these results and these forms that everybody's talking about, now they are so famous, the forms 34, form A and B, etc. We need to find a way where, even if it's a question of a matter, charges being pressed against, say, IBC, somebody, taking a petition to the courts, returning officers also should find, we need to find a way that they could be held strongly liable in case of some kind of mischief being played.
All right.
And that gap itself also is leading to this kind of...
All right.
I may not be clear on the specifics of the act, but I think even the county clerks, bear criminal responsibility. Yeah, so it may not happen here, they may not even know, but in the event that it can be proved that you are liable to any electoral offense, there is a criminal culpability that goes with it. So, it is important that even these guys who think that they are celebrities understand.
That was praised by a lot of pundits in the run to the election. I don't know if the Forms 34A are famous or infamous. So remember the Form 16A.
They're still famous. But now, look at it this way, Ben. As we are looking at all these claims and counterclaims, how do we position all these in view of the reports that have been released by all these international observers, over this election?
Right.
Because so far, in their interim reports, whether it's from the Carter Center through Honorable John Kerry, you realize that there is a clean bill of health that has been given of this election process. And all of them have indicated, even whether it's Honorable Mahama, and even the EU, that they have witnessed and observed a free,
fair election.
Fair and credible election.
All right, let's go to the National Tallying Center, the Bomas of Kenya, and find out from Yusuf. Before we do that, let's listen to what the